those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I am, as you can see, missing my co-host. Tonight, Drew is off, and I'm instead joined by my close personal friend, Donald Johnson. Don, man, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to be back on the show, and I love the show, man. I love what you guys are doing, and it is my favorite sports show, period, baby.
Good to see you, Owen, man. Glad to see you in here. He said he didn't get the description. It's the Chicago Bears tonight. We're also talking about Klay Thompson getting a reported max deal from Golden State. We're going to talk about if that makes sense. Also, the Lakers free up cap space by trading away a bunch of players. And should Ryan Shazier? This is an interesting question brought up by the community. I think it was Dylan that brought it up today. We're going to talk about whether Ryan Shazier should ever return, even if he gets the opportunity. So we want all your opinions on that and more as we go along here. Good to see you guys, as always. Owen, I know you're in the comments already. So, Don, before we get into it, why don't we start by talking a little Klay Thompson? Obviously, he's already come out and said if the Golden State Warriors offer him a max contract, he would sign it with them, hands down. Then, a couple days ago, we kind of got that little pushback of, hey, if the Warriors don't give me that max deal, I'm interested in talking to the Clippers. Is this a smart move for the Warriors to come out today and say that, look, we're offering Klay the max contract as soon as we're able?
Absolutely. It'd be really tough for them to lose a guy like Klay Thompson, and I'm sure Klay Thompson doesn't want to go anywhere else in his heart of hearts. He's homegrown. He spent his whole career with the Warriors, and to be honest with you, they need him, and I do think they're going to keep him. I can't really see him playing anywhere else or with anybody else. I think they just complement each other really well in Golden State with Curry and Thompson and the rest of those guys.
It sure would be a shame to see guys like the Splash Brothers split up after this point in their career, right? I mean, I know they got 3 titles and everything together, but it's just something iconic about these two shooters. Like when one of them gets hot and then the other one goes cold, it's like they have such good synergy that together, to me, they've been the biggest part of this Golden State run. I know there's the Kevin Durant year that they came in and won with him. I know they won before without him. And Draymond's been in the mix as well. But to me, it's always been the Splash Brothers that have kind of been the engine that makes Golden State go. I say props to Golden State for keeping them around.
Yeah, I agree. Here's what I'm trying to say. I agree totally with what you said with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson complementing each other really well. I feel like that team could afford to lose Draymond Green, and they could still be as good. He's more replaceable than Klay Thompson or Steph Curry for sure, but I can't see Klay Thompson leaving. I can't see him choosing anyone else over Golden State, even if it came down to, I'd say, 10 to 15 million.
No, I agree. And, I mean, he's always been the loyal soldier. He's the guy that said, way before free agency started, he said, look, I just want Golden State to offer the max deal. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to explore any options. There is no plan B for me or anything like that. It's always been, I want to stay for Golden State. I just want them to recognize that I, too, am a superstar on this team. I deserve to get paid. And I think they're going to recognize that. I think Klay Thompson kind of flies under the radar a little bit. I agree with you, Owen. Draymond is also a key piece, but I mean, Golden State, they've won these titles because they're able to shoot, and they're able to shoot so much better than everybody else in the league. I mean, we've seen Houston kind of rival them a little bit, but I think the whole engine for this whole Golden State run has been guys able to shoot at a much higher rate than anyone else in the NBA. I mean, they made the 3-game sexy again, right? I think almost single-handedly, they were the guys that moved the conversation away from you need to drive in, you need to take the easy shots, the easy points, into just start jacking up threes. Just start making all these 3 points and just outscore, and it's okay to miss sometimes as long as you're hitting at a higher rate than everybody else.
Yeah, and let's not forget, Klay Thompson's defense is second to none also at the 2 guard. He always guards the opposing team's best player or second best player and shut them down for the most part. And I mean, that's another thing, another part of his game that people take for granted is his defense. He's a good two-way player.
I totally agree with you, and losing him out of a team's backcourt, Golden State would struggle if all they had was Curry, because as good as Curry is in the offensive side of the ball, he is more of a defensive liability, just with his size. It's not necessarily an effort thing, but he's not anywhere near the defender Klay Thompson is. I'm right there with you. I think this makes perfect sense, and to me, this deal was probably going to be done anyway, Golden State might have tried to talk him down from the entire max deal, and I think that's what these last couple days were about when he said, look, if they don't offer me the max, I'm willing to listen to the Clippers, and I'm willing to move on if I have to. I think Golden State kind of said, all right, let's just stop beating around the bush, open up the wallet, and pay our superstar like he's one of our superstars. To me, I don't think there's any reason they should have been trying to shortchange him from the beginning.
He definitely deserves the money. He deserves every cent he's going to get. Personally, I think NBA players are a little overpaid anyways, but I'm not going to go there. I do think that Klay Thompson isn't going anywhere. I can't really see him playing anywhere else or with another superstar. I feel like, real quick, I don't want to get into it too much, but for example, if he goes and plays with LeBron or James Harden, I don't think he's going to be getting A, as many touches, and B, the type of chemistry that he's built with Steph Curry is not going to be matched at all wherever he goes. So,
well, I don't think he's a guy that needs a lot of chances. I mean, we've seen him take a back seat at times when Curry's hot, or like Owen was talking about, when Draymond comes alive in this offense. Even with Kevin Durant, we've seen he's almost that guy that when you need me, I'll be there. I'll be there to make those threes and get everybody back on track. But he's not the guy that has to be the focal point of the offense. I think he'd be great in a place with LeBron out there in LA. I think that's, to me, the ultimate fit for the Lakers, to get that clutch catch-and-shoot guy that can play the two guard, let LeBron and Anthony Davis do that dirty work in the lanes, get inside next to the basket, and you always have the kick out to a guy like Klay Thompson. That's, to me, might be the most effective spot for him. I mean, if he wanted to go chase a ring and he wanted to do it the easy way, I think that might be the easiest way to do it. I would leave and I'd go to the Lakers, because at least for the next couple of years, as long as LeBron is healthy, and even beyond that, having a guy like Anthony Davis there, having an amazingly clutch catch-and-shoot guy that plays good defense on top of it, I think is exactly what that team's missing.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Lakers, them freeing up that extra money for the max spot, this might be a route they could go.
As long as he was willing, I mean, they could, but I think already, because Klay is such a loyal soldier, his mind was already made up. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the Lakers have freed up $32 million now, having traded away just about everybody on this roster now, except for Kyle Kuzma and LeBron James before Anthony Davis comes to town. First off, is that the right move? Is it okay to hit the refresh button? I mean, they're doing a hard blow-up of this roster, betting all on bringing in superstars and winning with top guys. But we've seen people like Golden State flame out with that kind of mentality, where you stack too much on the top end. You don't have enough depth to fill in behind him. With LeBron getting hurt last year, Don, and then with Anthony Davis' injury history as well, was this the right move to go for stars instead of better role players?
Personally, I don't think so. They need to take this money and they need to go out and build the best team possible around LeBron and Anthony Davis if you can. Bring in a Trevor Ariza, bring in a Patrick Beverly. Bring in guys that are good, above average. You don't necessarily need a max style superstar to compete with the Golden State Warriors, especially since Kevin Durant's going to be out for the next season. Let's not lie. That's going to be really your only competition for the most part. With things going the way they are in Houston and the East being the East, I feel like they can get by, and if they can add key pieces and use that money wisely and think about the future, think about life after LeBron. LeBron's only going to be there for, he's going to be LeBron for the next 2 or 3 years max. I'd be very surprised if he's better after that. But this team is now centered upon Anthony Davis. If they can resign him next year, they need to take that into account, and they need to get role players and bring people in that are going to help score the basket when they're open.
Exactly. Even if you land another superstar, the nightmare scenario is something happens to LeBron and Anthony Davis misses some games in the stretch, and you're pretty much putting it all on this new young guy. Or even worse, Anthony Davis is the only healthy man around, and he's doing all the work. He says, why am I doing all this? LeBron can't stay healthy. This other superstar you brought in isn't good enough. I've got my opt-out. You just traded all that away to have Anthony Davis leave on you. So I absolutely agree, man. It's a nightmare scenario for them. I almost would go depth here too. I would almost try to take this $32 million and sign 3 or 4 guys at that $6, $7, $8 million range, instead of going and paying one guy 27, having 3 great players, and then a team full of league minimum stars, or not even stars, league minimum, veterans on this team that maybe will have enough gas left in the tank to be, subpar in the NBA. The problem to me here is everybody's leaning on these stars. Everybody's buying in on, I need to win free agency to win the championship. We just saw Golden State win free agency in these past couple of years, bringing in DeMarcus Cousins, bringing in Kevin Durant as well a couple years ago. And even though most of this team is built in the draft, a couple injuries come into those top guys, and you're done. I mean, you can't keep up. Even Toronto, with as underwhelming as that roster appeared to us, with guys like Fred VanVleet and Siakam coming out of nowhere, we saw these guys step up in big moments because there was no one better to beat them on Golden State, I believe.
Yes, exactly. And this kind of reminds me of the Miami Heat situation back in 2012 when they first formed. You know, they had the big three, but they didn't have a bench. And what happened that year? They lost to the Dallas Mavericks. It wasn't until later when they added Ray Allen at league minimum. You know, basically what Golden State's been doing the last 4 years with these guys. But they got to pick up the slack, man. You can't have three guys carrying the team and, you know, getting a bunch of no-names coming out there and hoping they can do their job. It's not going to happen, man. You need a full team now. You need to get depth, and the only way to do it is to not sign another max player and use that money wisely.
I'm with you. All right, Mike, good to see you, man. Also, Sean, nice to see you in the comments, as always. Robert wants to know here, says he's a lifelong Seahawks fan from day one. Why don't the Hawks get a lot of respect, is what he wants to know. And he also wants to know, when are they going to learn, when is everyone going to learn that Seattle does really, really well drafting in the late rounds of drafts and only lost to the Rams by a collective 4 points in 2 games. Do you feel like the Seahawks are an underrated squad here going into this season? Or, Don, do you feel like the Seahawks are one of those teams that, even though not everybody talks about them like the New England Patriots or like even the Saints or the Rams going into this year, are they getting the respect they deserve, or could there be a little bit more going on in Seattle?
You know, to be honest with you, Jake, this is go both ways here. Do I feel like they don't get enough respect? No. I feel like teams respect them. I feel like the fans respect him. Obviously, Russell Wilson just got paid. He is a beast of a quarterback. Everyone respects him. To me, the thing about Seattle is the front office and the decisions that they make with the players that they sign and what's going on. I feel like the team hasn't had a great or put forth a great effort to build around Russell Wilson. They really haven't given him pieces since, you know, Baldwin left now and Lynch has been gone. They haven't had a decent running back really since, like a really true go-to guy. It's been more of a running back by committee. Look, you just paid your guy. It's kind of a similar situation to Green Bay, if you ask me, where they're kind of heavily focused now on the offense more than the defense. And Russell Wilson is going to need some help, man. You can't just leave him out to die out there, you know?
I'm with you, and in years past, I think they've done a poor job of protecting him. I think the offensive line has been a big-time point of contention for Seattle, but I will say this. I wouldn't necessarily say they're underrated as a team. I think people were ready to give up on them when the Legion of Boom kind of fell apart. You know, you saw a lot of these veterans that were the main focal point of the team kind of dissolve in these past few years. With Earl Thomas gone, obviously that era is over now. But they managed to be good without him. I mean, he was on the team last year, but only played a couple games before he got hurt for the entire season. I think the Seattle Seahawks, their biggest need is they need the next level of star to step up if they want to be talked about like teams like the Saints and the Rams and the Patriots that everyone always say are complete teams. I don't see them as a complete team yet. I really don't. I think they did a good job last year. I think a lot of that is on Russell Wilson. Robert, I'm glad. I know I've seen you comment on a bunch of stuff in our micro posting and everything like that, Robert. I'm glad to see you on the show as well. I'll say this, though. I think the Seahawks, before we move on, are one of those teams that are maybe not the best in the NFL. They're not a complete team, but they're in that second tier right behind them, that they're a dangerous team. They're a playoff threat. Like you said, they challenged the Rams really well last year. They just need to learn to get everything kind of kicking on all cylinders. The running game's been working. But like you said, Don, they've lost some receivers, and they've got some changeover in that wide receiving core now. The secondary has been a little more suspect since losing guys out of the Legion of Boom, but they're still decent. We need that next crop of stars to step up for Seattle. I still believe they're a dangerous team, but I want to see a little bit more before I'm ready to call them the favorites in any NFC, or any part of the NFC. I mean, you've got the Bears that are going to be good, that we're going to talk about here in a minute. You've got the Saints, the Rams. This is the hardest conference to play in football. It's much less about the Seattle getting disrespected than it is about there's just so many good teams that there's a lot of talk about everybody going on in the NFC. Let me do a few more comments here, Don. before we move on here. Mike says that Kuzma is the future, and he's hoping they get Kawhi. If you spelled it right, I think you did, Mike. Good job on that. You passed the spelling bee. You win the spelling bee after all those ties this year. One thing I will say, I'm with you. I like Kuzma sticking around. I would have liked to see him hang on to Brandon Ingram, too. I'm okay with him trading Lonzo Ball and all the distractions that come with that. At the very least, the Lakers hung on to one of their big three young guns that were coming up. The question is going to be, is he going to slot in really well with Anthony Davis in this lineup, with LeBron in the lineup? What is this lineup going to look like, and is Kuzma going to get enough minutes to develop properly? And are they willing to bet on him? I think the Lakers have absolutely taken the mercenary road here lately and said, we don't care, we want to be good right now, and we want to maximize our ability to win with LeBron James. I don't know if that's if that's the best path long term for your franchise, but I will say this. They're all in, and when you sign a 34-year-old free agent in LeBron, you almost have to be all in.
Yeah, no, here's the thing about Kyle Kuzma. He's getting into a situation now where if they sign a max player, he's going to be getting a lot of minutes. I mean, a lot of minutes, because they're not going to have a bench, obviously, or as strong of a bench unless you get guys coming in taking the league minimum, which I think is going to be a little easier said than done. But I really honestly don't like this fit for Kyle Kuzma. I feel like he's going to be having a lot of unnecessary pressure put forth on him. This is going to be a chance for him to get open looks, and he's going to really have to work on his shot and knock them down, because he's going to be the GOAT. And by GOAT, I mean scapegoat for these superstars if they're losing games and Kyle Kuzma's not performing as well as he should be.
All right, moving on through the comments. Joey says the Cowboys are going to win it all this year. Joey, like I said with the Seahawks, man, they're one of those teams that's in that second tier of talent where they're very, very good, but I just don't know if I can match them up with some of these other teams in the NFC because everybody's so good. Things change quick in the NFL. They may have a breakout player or two that all of a sudden we're talking about them being one of the best squads in the NFL. The question to me is going to be, can they keep it up? I have my doubts. I don't know that necessarily this is going to be a given that the Cowboys are going to be a playoff team, but I like the way they're trending. I like some of the moves they've made. We'll talk about them in their own episode coming up later, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully we still got our stream. I'm not sure what happened here, but my picture went out. I hope your guys' picture's there. Let me know in the comments if you can't see me, or if you can see me. Going forward here, Austin says, Dame and Portland need more respect. Do you think the Trailblazers are disrespected here in the NBA, Don?
I think they got disrespected out of the playoffs last year, to be honest with you. They got straight swept by Golden State. They're going to need to add some key pieces, man. Dame and McCollum can't do it all. I understand Nurkic, I believe, was hurt. Yusuf Nurkic was hurt. He is a big piece of that team. I feel like they could have done better. They would have at least won one game against Golden State. I do like the direction this team is headed. I've been a big Damian Lillard fan for a while now. I'm glad to see him get over the hump. The only thing I would like to see better from Damian Lillard is better shot selection, to be honest with you. I don't know if you remember one of the games last year in the playoffs against the Golden State Warriors. They could have taken the lead on a two-pointer. Instead, he throws up a three from the corner, fading out of bounds. He just tries to do too much. I think he needs to start getting his head in the game a little more. And they do need to build some talent around that team also, because their time's dwindling down together. It's
only crazy if it doesn't work, Don. That's all I can say. Just moving through the comments here really quick. Mike says he's talking to Joey when he says that the Cowboys are going to win it every year. I understand, but I think they're closer now than they've been in a long time. Also, Sam, Andrew is celebrating his anniversary today, so he is out again. Had to give him a day off sooner or later, right? Drew barely misses any shows. I think today we can all forgive him for wanting to spend it with his wife.
Happy anniversary to Drew and his wife, man. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And Mike says he keeps saying it about the Bengals, that sooner or later it's their year. Mike, I will say this. Brace yourself. You're definitely farther away than the Cowboys are. Moving through it, Brian, good to see you. Sam, I let you know where Andrew is. Joey, I'm glad you're drinking as well. Sam wants to know if the Cowboys' odds are 10,000 to 1. If they are, I would definitely put a couple bucks on that because I love 10,000 to 1 odds. Don, I think we could be talking about a Leicester City-style run here where I could make a fortune by only laying down a couple bucks.
Yeah, there's been a lot of Dallas Cowboy comments. I'm actually really surprised. Brace yourselves for this one. I feel like the Cowboys are going to take a step back this year. I don't think they're making the playoffs.
Austin says the NFC is much better than the AFC. I tend to agree with that, except for maybe the top end of the AFC. I like the Chiefs. I like the Patriots. If the Steelers can figure out what they're doing, then maybe. And also the Chargers. But I think that the NFC is just much deeper in talent. There's so many other teams that can sneak in there, like the Falcons, like the Seahawks, like even the Panthers, teams that are hanging around that might be good and have enough to make it to the playoffs if things go right for them. The AFC, there's a couple big dogs, but you pretty much know outside of the AFC South who's going to be good and who isn't. Also, Joey, our top fan badges are decided by Facebook. We don't actually pick the people who are top fans. You're all top fans in our books, but you just got to up that comment rate if you want to be a top fan. That's all I can say. Comment, like, share if you want to get one of those badges. Joey also says the NBA blows. Is it September yet? We're getting closer, buddy. That's all I can say. Thank you, Mike, for letting me know he can still see us. I don't know why Facebook hates me, but it still does. Also, thank you, Julio, for letting me know that as well. We'll move on here, though, I think. One more comment before we do, because John wants to talk about the Bears. Austin says 2 teams from every NFC division could make the playoffs. He doesn't think we can say that the same about the AFC. I said the exact same thing before I read the comment. We are totally in agreement. The NFC is deep. The AFC has some top-end talent. The middle of the pack, though, not quite as good. Don, one more story before we get on to the Bears. Should Ryan Shazier, formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, massive injury to his spinal column, there's talk about if he comes back, when he comes back. We had Dylan ask us in the comments, should he come back at all, even if the doctors clear him? I want to get your take on it before I move on to mine.
This is a really tough one. I thought about this for a little while, and, you love something so much that you don't want to give it up. But in this case, I think he should give it up. I think he should hang it up. I think he should realize that he's very fortunate that he's able to walk. Talk about life-threatening, life-altering situation that happened to him. I give him major props for putting in the work in rehab and going through what he did, man. I honestly feel like he should take a step back, think about it, reevaluate himself, and just think, hey, man, I'm lucky now. Will I be as fortunate if it happens again? I'm sure the Steelers would be more than happy to offer him a job with their organization, doing something, whether it's something from conditioning or being a coach or something else with the team. But for his sake and for his family's sake, I would take a step back if I were him, and I would call it quits.
Maybe I'm in the minority here because I saw a lot of that in the comments when I was talking to people before. A lot of people were saying, it's time to hang it up, man. You should give it up. It's not worth the risk and everything, but I'll say this. The biggest argument I saw was, you have a family now. You have all this going on. How can you put yourself back in harm's way? But I'll say this. Football is a very dangerous game. To me, and this is a long-term answer, I want you to listen to the whole thing before you get upset or anything else. To me, each and every one of these guys takes the risk of being seriously injured or even killed every time they step on the field. I don't think Ryan Shazier is special in the fact that even him coming back, he's risking a lot by even playing in the NFL today. Okay? I'm not saying it wouldn't be spectacular. It would be one of the... We talked about this before the show, Don. You said this would be one of the best comebacks in sports history if he comes back. To me, if this is your passion, if this is your life's work, and you care about the game that much, and you go and see the team's doctors, guys that have no sort of biased as to whether they give you a certain answer any way or the other, and they say you're healthy enough to play, I would play again if it was me. And I understand the other side of the argument, Don. If it was my son, and my son got hurt like that, and he said, Dad, I want to play again, I would tell him, no way, man, hang it up. It's not worth it. You've already got millions in the bank. You have your family. Be thankful to get out of it. But if it was me, I don't think I could walk away from the game. I couldn't. I mean, that's my life's work. I know people are naysaying, and people are saying, it's time to give it up. It's time for you to turn it over to the next generation, or just be thankful you survived and were able to walk again and come back from this injury in some sort of fashion. But to me, I wouldn't want to leave something on the table. There will always be people telling you can't do something in life, but great people are the ones who are willing to be unreasonable and to say, I want to do this regardless of who tells me I can't or I shouldn't or there's no reason to or it's impossible. You have to overcome that, in my opinion. That to me, as long as he is able to get some doctors that don't have a say in this to clear him, I would play. I absolutely would.
Yeah, and this, in my opinion, this is where I would seek outside consolation from a doctor. I would go see another specialist from another team. I would even go out of the country and, check out some specialists there too. This is something, like you said, where you need an unbiased opinion. You really need to get your head around it if you are going to go back. But me personally, if it was me, I think I'd call it a career, man. And I understand there's the whole uneasy feeling of unfinished business and wanting to go and compete. And he's a fighter, obviously. He's a big competitor. I'm sure he wants to win a ring and bring another championship to Pittsburgh. But when it comes to things like that, let's think about how many other guys have had their career taken away from them from similar injuries. One that stands out to me particularly is Johnny Knox. Wasn't exactly the same injury, but it was a vertebrae neck injury. So, just look at it that way, man. Just be thankful. You put in the work, you're up and walking again, you can do your daily activities, run and all that stuff. But, once you injure a part of your body, you become more susceptible to re-injuring that same area.
Julio wants to know what I'm drinking tonight, guys. I am drinking Yingling. John's got sharp eyes. He picked it out of the crowd. Also, Mike, love me some PBR too, man, but that's just not on the menu tonight. I don't know. Maybe after the show I'll go wrangle some of that up too. Going through some of this, Austin says, if it's his passion and what he truly wants to do, then who are we to say otherwise? I'm kind of with you, and he's kind of made that point that I want to come back. It's worth it to me even to take this risk and play. I understand setting pride aside, and I think it really does need to be the team doctors who clear him, because I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to want the bad PR of you told Ryan Shazier it was okay to come back, and he managed to hurt himself even worse, and you could have prevented it. That would absolutely crush the Steelers organization, I believe. I think, to me, that's probably the most unbiased opinion you're going to get. If you go and see a specialist and you tell them, look, man, I'm trying to get back on the field, they will tell you what you want to hear. We see this all the time with doctors, especially with athletes in high-profile places. They will tell you what you want to match whatever your opinion is. If you want to get back on the field, they'll tell you, don't worry, man, you can do it as long as you pay the right amount. On the other hand... Absolutely, tall boys, gotta be, John. On the other hand, if you don't want to play, they'll tell you, no, man, you're too hurt. It's this, it's that, here are the risks. You always run the risk of that. I would want it to be the team doctors who the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm sure, will inform, we can't have egg on our face in this one, okay? This is incredibly important. We need the most honest assessment we can get. Where do you get that? From people you're not paying. I think the minute you start paying them is the minute that your diagnosis starts to become skewed in one direction or another. Moving back through a couple... Go ahead.
Sorry, let's not get it twisted now. We're not telling, Shazier what to do here. We're just talking about our own opinions, and obviously, the fans of the show are entitled to theirs, but I just want to clarify that we're giving our opinions about what we would do. We're not trying to tell Ryan or Shazier what to do. Exactly,
and if you go to that doctor that's unbiased from the team and he says, look, man, you do this, there's a 30, 40, 50% chance this happens to you again and you never take another step, then I would say hang it up. But if they give you that clean bill that says, look, there's that chance you re-injure yourself, but from all our accounts, we believe that you can play and you can be healthy doing so, then I wouldn't fault him for wanting to come back. Again, it's his passion. It's what he wants to do in life. I don't think anyone should hold you back from it. Every guy that steps on the football field, every single one of them, I don't care if he's a punter, is taking the risk of taking that wrong shot, getting thrown to the turf, and having serious injury or even death brought upon them. I don't think we can sit there and tell Shazier he can't go do what he wants to do because of that. Let's go back to the comments here really quick. Brian says, if he clears it at 100% with no chance of re-injury, then he can play. But if not, he should retire and the Steelers should bring him back as a coach. I'm with you there, but nothing in life is 100%. Even the doctors will tell him, look, here are the odds. You do with it what you will. It's a gamble. It absolutely is a gamble. I don't think anyone can come into this saying there's a 100% chance I'll never get hurt. Look at guys that have had serious back and neck injuries. Peyton Manning, Derek Carr's broken vertebrae. We have guys in the NFL that take damages to their spine all the time. It's a rough game. It's absolutely a blood sport. You got to know what you're getting into. And that's my point. As long as he knows what what the risks are, and he has an honest assessment of that. If he decides that's what he wants to do, I can't fault him for it. Brian agrees with you. He says Johnny Knox's injury was brutal as well. Brian is drinking Miller Lite, and moving forward here, John, like I said, it's got to be tall boys. You mentioned Benny Snell as well, and then I appreciate it. Sean, you're always a big supporter. John says the Lakers need to pick me up. I'm with you, man. I'll take a mill. I'll work cheap. I'll be with the president for, or I'll be the president of basketball operations for considerably less than whoever else you're going to bring in from the NBA world. So if they want to give me a call, I'm right there with you.
Hey, sign me up. I'll be the team's Brian Scalabrine.
Exactly. And Scott wants to know, isn't there a big risk every time someone takes the field? Yes. And is Ryan Shazier at a bigger risk than everyone else? He is, but you can't tell a guy that you can't chase your dreams because there's a chance something may go bad for you. I think if he comes back with any semblance of health, they should give him the chance if that's what he wants to do.
Heck, even the referees take a chance when they're on the field.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you got those guys that size running at that speed that collide with you, you never know. I mean, most of those guys aren't in great shape either, are they, Don?
You know, it always cracks me up when you see this 350-pound referee sitting right in the middle, right next to the linebackers, right behind the linebackers, like, oh, hey, you know, I'm right here. I'm a target. Hit me.
Absolutely. All right, Austin wants to know, whose schedule are we talking about tonight? Don, we will move on, and we're going to get into the meat of this program and talk about the Chicago Bears here. I've had a lot of Bears fans wanting to know exactly when are we going to do them. Well, it's right now. And to start you off, Don, let's start by talking about how they did last year. When you talk about this team, it is an offense that finished 21st in the NFL with the 21st best passing game, which to me was a little surprising. I mean, you could attribute some of that to Mitch Trubisky missing some games. You can probably attribute that to them still being built like a running team, but with Matt Nagy coming in, I was a little surprised by that number. I was thinking somewhere around 15, 16, 17 at the worst.
Yeah, let's not forget, first year learning the offense. I expect nothing less than at least 15 this year. To be honest with you, realistically, if this offense is going to be as good as it's going to be and make a run, I think they need to be top 10. And that second year in the offense, all these weapons built around Trubisky, there's going to be no excuses this year at all, in my opinion.
Well, I don't think the offense is quite there yet. I think the lack of draft picks, and we'll talk about that in a minute, from this year kind of holds his team back a little bit. Let me go to the comments really quick, Don. Hold with me. Sean, that is not Drew on the phone. That is actually my friend Don Johnson, 49ers fan, sports fan, aficionado out there on the West Coast. We're glad he's with us tonight. Ian, yes, it is a solo show in some sense that I'm the only guy at the bar tonight. Don is with me over the phone. Drew is on his anniversary, so he's going to miss the rest of the show tonight. And I'm with you, John. I mean, Bolden, another one of those guys. Injury is always a scary thing, but I think these guys are warriors if they choose to keep going, and as long as there's not just irrefutable facts that if you play, you're going to get messed up, they should have their chance. Scott's saying the Bears should be pretty good next year, and Austin is also saying Trey Burton disappointed him. The defense was number 1 in the league, if he's not mistaken. They were number 1 in scoring, Austin, but they were 3rd in yardage. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but there were 3 defenses, in my opinion here, Don, that were at the very cusp of the league, or probably 4, because I want to include my team in this too. You have the Buffalo Bills, that were a very good defense, very unsung, that did a good job of helping out an offense that was pretty stagnant despite their rookie quarterback. You have the Baltimore Ravens, of course, because they're that defense that always seems to be in the mix when we're talking about top 5, top 10 defenses. You have my Tennessee Titans that in yardage, not fantastic, but in scoring, were absolutely amazing at keeping teams off the board. And then you have the Chicago Bears that do everything well. I mean, their worst stat here, Don, in passing, they were ranked 7th. This team knows how to play defense. And what's more, and this is more important to me, they kept everybody together. It's very, very difficult in the NFL to keep a unit that performs incredibly well together because all those guys want to go off and get paid elsewhere. They lost Adrian Amos. They lost Bryce Callahan. But I think they did a good job replacing with guys like Clinton Dix and Buster Skrine. The Bears' defense is poised to have another great year as long as Khalil Mack is healthy and leading the charge on that defensive line.
Yeah, let's not forget last year, Khalil Mack did miss a few games. Bryce Callahan missed a few games, especially that playoff game against the Eagles, where they were a dink and a doink away from winning that game. This defense, when it comes to yardage, to me, that's a little false fool's gold set. I feel like defense shouldn't be judged on yardage. It's kind of gimmicky to me. I feel like it should be judged on takeaways, points, forced fumbles, all that, interceptions, all that good stuff. That's why I think the Bears and the Ravens, to me, are the clear-cut two defenses in the league that are the best. From last year, that is.
Whoa. Hold on. You're forgetting one team in two-tone blue that you didn't mention in that great defense kind of argument there. Can my Titans get any love from you, Don?
Your Titans are going to get love from me if they can prove that they can come close to what they did last year this year, because they did lose a lot.
They've been doing it for 3 years now, buddy. This has been the only part of the team that's any good.
I don't know, man. What happened last year, buddy?
They were third in scoring. They were third, barely losing to the Bears. They were like 1.5 points behind the Bears in points allowed per game. We're not making this about the Titans, but come on, show some respect to my boys. They were great all year long. They're the unsung defense nobody talks about.
Maybe if you guys had a quarterback, you'd be straight. Who knows? Maybe that'll change this year.
And I'm with you on that. I'm absolutely with you on that. One more point before I move into some of these comments here. Again, Don, their defense is fantastic. Everybody knows that. They struggled throwing the ball a little bit. They were ranked 20th, so you're not the worst, right? There's 21st, I'm sorry. There's 11 teams behind you in the NFL. You're not the absolute bottom of the barrel. They were a good running team. Despite all the Jordan Howard naysaying, despite everyone saying Tyreek Cohen can't carry the load and he can't hold off enough carries and stay healthy, they were 11th in the running game, and they were 9th in scoring. This team puts points on the board and does not let other teams score. That's why they had the record they had last year. On top of that, Don, they were fantastic taking the ball away, finishing third in the NFL with a plus 12 rating. They took the ball away 12 more times than they gave it up. This team's poised to have another great 2019.
It is, and it's all going to be on the hands of number 10. As long as he can keep his cool and keep his composure and not turn that ball over, I think they're going to be fine. That defense is going to carry them just like it did last year. And all Trubisky really needs to do is not do too much. He needs to be a game manager, make sure he doesn't turn the ball over, and I'd like to see him take a step forward this year. Let's not put up Jay Cutler numbers now.
Let me jump into the comments here really quick. This is one that I actually want to get your opinion on. Frank says the Bears need a true number one wide receiver. Do you see Allen Robinson as that number one guy? Because I have all the respect in the world for him. Watching this guy work against the Titans in Jacksonville, this guy made Blake Bortles look like a good quarterback and made the Jaguars hang on to him for an extra couple of years with an extension. Do you believe Allen Robinson is good enough to be a number one? Or are the Bears kind of just not necessarily pretending, but not as good as some of these other number one wide receivers in the NFL because Allen Robinson's the guy leading the charge of their wide receiving core?
Now, we had this conversation last year when Allen Robinson first signed with the Bears.
And what did I tell you?
You were the one that pointed out to me that he had something special. He doesn't have the glitz, he doesn't have the glamour, but he gets it done. And when everyone looks at a star wide receiver, one of the things a star wide receiver possesses is attitude and wanting the spotlight. He's not like that at all, and I think that's one of the reasons why people overlook him. To me, there's two types of elite receivers. There's 1A and 1B. 1A meaning those receivers that really need the spotlight, and 1B meaning those receivers that are gritty, grimy, get the job done. And this is Allen Robinson to me. He is a number one receiver. He's that 1B receiver. He doesn't need all the attention. He doesn't need all the glitz and glamour and all that BS that guys like Odell Beckham Jr. and Antonio Brown need. He gets the job done. He made so many clutch catches that went under the radar last year. I couldn't believe it. How many times did I send you videos about some of these catches that I could not believe that he did? and how underrated he was.
What did I tell you, Don? That's all I can say, man. Look, watching this guy play with Blake Bortles, he made Blake Bortles a great quarterback. He made Allen Hurns a guy worthy of a contract with the Dallas Cowboys. This guy is a stud. I absolutely believe this, Frank. They are good enough with the guy they have. If they can keep the rock, or if they can keep Allen Robinson healthy, that is his only concern. You keep this guy healthy, he'll draw enough attention off of these other receivers where everybody will have a good year. He'll get 1,000 yards. We won't be talking about him like he's Mike Evans. We won't be talking about him like he's Odell Beckham. We won't be talking like he's like he's Antonio Brown. But what we will be saying is the Bears have a good passing attack and a good rushing attack and an amazing defense, and it's all because Allen Robinson is able to take enough off of the rest of the guys in that wide receiving core. He's a great receiver. I really do believe that. I think he's one of those guys that has great speed. He has great catching ability. Even if he's not the guy catching touchdowns, he makes defenses worry about him, and he makes defenses want to spend the double team on him and take assets out of that defensive back core. The question to me is going to be, can he stay healthy? Because he's had injury concerns. I want to see a guy playing in cold weather outside in Chicago. I know he had a good 2018. I want to see multiple years in a row for Allen Robinson. That, to me, is the biggest question. Let's move on for a couple more comments here. Sean, I do have a Facebook. You can also message the show. Feel free to, man. We always love to field those comments or anything you want to talk about. We're there for you. You can message Sports Around the Bar, or, I mean, if you want my personal one, I'm not a stranger. Just let me know. John also wants to know, can the Patriots actually be stopped? I think this team is built to do that. I think Chicago's defense and the way they get after the quarterback is like the nightmare scenario for the Patriots. Trent Brown's gone. Logan Mankins is gone. The Patriots' offensive line eventually will come back down to earth. I have to at least tell myself that. If you put Khalil Mack and all these other great defensive rushers on this Bears offensive front or defensive front against the Patriots, this is the team that they struggle against because you can't use those running backs out of the backfield to make that big of an impact. They've got good linebackers to go with it. The Bears, to me, might be the Patriots' kryptonite. The Patriots just took advantage of a Rams team that had a young coach who was a little outweighed by the moment. I'm going to move forward here because we got to keep going here, Don. We got to keep going. We can't get tied down too much. Austin wants to know, he says, Amos is better than HaHa Clinton Dix. It probably won't matter much given how good the rest of the defense is. The only thing I'll say is this, Austin. We say Adrian Amos is better having played with the Bears defense and as good as they've been. Even before Khalil Mack, this is a top 10 defense we're talking about here. You take Khalil Mack and they become a top 1, 2, 3, depending on what metric you want to use. Does he benefit from all the rest of the guys around him? And then you look at HaHa Clinton Dix. He's been playing in Green Bay. Their defense hasn't been good since they won the Super Bowl. I mean, let's face it. This defense has been what's weighing Green Bay down, and he's still managed to shine. And he's been a good player in that secondary. He's not great. I wouldn't call him an elite player by any means, but I don't know that I'm willing to give Adrian Amos the just clear nod that he's 100% better. Would I take Amos over him? Of course I would. He's younger. He's had the better looking tape at this point, but I think HaHa Clinton Dix playing with a defense like the Bears is going to be able to make an impact. Don, your thoughts really quick?
Yes, I think he will, and let's not forget him and Eddie Jackson played together in Alabama, so hopefully they can get that chemistry clicking.
Ian says Lions, Bears, Packers, and Vikings in last. That's how he sees the NFC North shaking out this year. I think you got the Lions a little bit high there. I think it's going to be Bears, Vikings, Packers, Lions, in my opinion. I think the Lions, for all of the good things they did last year, are still in the rebuilding trail. Don, any thoughts before we move on?
I got the Vikings third and the Packers second behind the Bears in that division this year.
Okay, John says Mahomes will show this year, Super Bowl. This is that kind of matchup I'd like to see, the amazing defense versus the amazing offense as well. Sean's rubbing it in. He says the Buffalo Bills beat my team last year. Well, we get the rematch this year, if I'm not mistaken, Sean. I think we play the Bills again. I can't wait to see how that shakes out. Also, we were 1 interception for 6 by Kamale Correa on that botched field goal attempt, if you remember, Sean, away from beating a team like Buffalo, along with all the numerous mistakes the Titans made in that game. That's just how my team operates. When they should beat somebody, they wind up losing. When they shouldn't beat somebody, they wind up having a competitive game. We beat the Eagles, lost to the Bills. Does it make any sense? Of course not, but that's Tennessee sports. Brian says Montgomery will get plenty of playing time. Before we talk about him, just really quick here, I think he's a great addition. I think that is a third-round pick. To me, this is my favorite running back off the board because you didn't overspend on him. You got a value pick. You got a guy who may eventually turn into an elite guy, but you didn't have to spend a first-round pick on him. You didn't have to draft him like Zeke Elliott. You didn't reach on him like the Raiders did with Josh Jacobs this year. Love David Montgomery's pickup and also Riley Reid in the 4th round. All right, Don, I'll keep going. John says the Bears need an Edelman. I think they might have got that in Riley Ridley. He's not Calvin Ridley, his brother. He's not quite as fast. He's not quite as physically gifted as Calvin Ridley is, but I think they've got a very good slot receiver who's going to make those important catches, and he's going to be able to wiggle a little bit. Do I think that's a guarantee? Of course not. There's no guarantee any kind of college prospect translates well into the NFL. Look at Jadeveon Clowney. But I do believe that they've taken the steps to add to this kind of interior passing game where it can be the third guy in the slot, or it can be the fourth guy, or it can be the tight end who makes a difference in the middle as well. All right, Sean.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
The biggest question to me for the Bears on the receiving end is we already know what you're getting with Allen Robinson. We need to see who's going to step up into that number 2 role. To me, it's Anthony Miller's position to lose. I'd like to see more out of him. He had a good year last year for his rookie season. I feel like he could have done better, but there are learning experiences in your first year in the NFL. So we got to see what happens there, man. They're gonna have quite the wide receiver competition over there in Chicago.
And Frank's hoping that's true. I'm right there with you, Frank. I think they're good with Miller. I really do. I think they got a gem in the draft here. I don't remember exactly. I think he was a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, but this kid out of Memphis, I believe, has the talent to be a 2nd wide receiver. He still has some developing to do, but wide receiver is one of those positions you grow into in the NFL. You don't come out and dominate like you're a left tackle. Or anything like, or even some quarterbacks, I would say, is a growing position. This is one of those spots that you're going to see 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, Anthony Miller at his best. The question is going to be, can he give him enough in 2019 to be good enough? Because for all the rest of this, we know Matt Nagy wants to throw the ball. We know Matt Nagy wants a passing offense. They did very little to address that in free agency, and they only took a 4th round receiver. I know they didn't have the capital, Don. But for an offense that wants to be more pass-centric, I would like to see more, especially if you're going to lean on Mitch Trubisky the way they do.
I think they're really relying on the growth of Anthony Miller and Taylor Gabriel's also there. And honestly, I think they had a good move picking up Riley Ridley, and don't forget they still have Burton there too. So I feel like this offense is ready to explode, man. It's all in number 10's hands.
And I agree. I think Scott's right when he says you don't need a super athlete in the slot. It helps. It always helps, right? Athleticism is never a bad thing, but you need a guy who can create a little bit of wiggle room. You need a guy who is quicker than he is fast, a guy that has good acceleration, good speed coming off of changing direction, and I think they probably have that in a guy like Riley Ridley. Even though he's not Calvin Ridley, who's going to be eventually a number 1 wide receiver, I believe, I think this guy is going to be a very good role player that the Bears are going to lean on, and hopefully he's one of those guys that slips through the cracks and the Bears get to keep him for a while, because the worst thing is always like Cole Beasley, where you have some success with a guy and he decides he wants to get it paid and he moves on somewhere else. Let me go through a few more of these comments before we talk about their schedule. Brian says Ridley is a route runner and a possession receiver. He is, but I still believe in his ability to generate a little bit of space. He doesn't have elite speed, but he did a good job at Georgia of creating that wiggle room between receivers. I don't want to draw Jordy Nelson comparisons, but Jordy Nelson comes to mind when I say that. He's not the best athlete in the field, but he runs precise routes. He's very good running them, and he also has just enough speed and quickness to generate the space you need to make guys miss, to get those open passes and make difficult throws manageable.
Yeah, exactly. He can get open, and that's all that matters in the NFL. You get open, you get the ball. That's it. Exactly. And I won't go into that. I mean, I think Matt Nagy's system did a good job of opening things up for the pass and getting guys into space. I think another weapon like Riley Ridley is exactly what the Bears need. A few more, Don. Bear with me here. Ian says, I need to add a chair here at the bar for Bob. Very knowledgeable. And Brian says Anthony Miller will be the 2. I agree with you. I think Riley Ridley's going to be the slot. You're still going to see Taylor Gabriel. I believe they still have him hanging around in there, making a bit of an impact. But I think he's going to be the odd man out this year. He's going to be the guy with a little bit extra speed. You run down, he's going to make a couple big plays. Beyond that, he's a forgotten man. Now, Drew
some of you may know this guy, says that it's a sports show. We need a short, fat, handsome devil sitting next to me. I think I fit most of those categories. Short, fat, and handsome. Devil? Maybe not. I think I'm the angel of the show. But hey, that's just my opinion. Austin says they could use Doug Baldwin in the slot. A lot of people could use a healthy Doug Baldwin in the slot, but the health is the issue here. Brian says Gabriel needs to take the top off the defense as a deep threat to open everything up underneath. Even in Atlanta, though, I will caution with this. He was the guy that caught the ball and then used his elite speed to get away from people. He did a little bit of deep work, but he was never that guy that he's not Ted Ginn, that you send him deep on every play and just hope something opens up. To me, I don't know that Taylor Gabriel's that guy. I think they still need a guy that has that elite speed, even though I believe in Allen Robinson's speed. One more.
I think you're underrating Taylor Gabriel a little bit there, Jake. This guy's got great hands.
How many yards did he have last year, Don?
Well, hey.
Like 300?
Go back and look at tape. He made a lot of clutch catches last year. I'm just saying.
Okay.
This guy, when you need him to be there, when you need a play, you can count on him to catch the ball, and that really does matter. Whether it's one catch, 2 catches a game, just think about how many times there have been games decided because people can't hang on to the ball. This guy can catch, man. He's an absolute monster. His hands are one of the best in the NFL when it comes to the deep ball catches.
I don't know about that, but one thing I will tell you, like we talked about beforehand, Taylor Gabriel, we talked about this last season, even going into it. Taylor Gabriel is the guy you want to have 3rd, 4th, 5th in your stable of wide receivers. He's a great team guy. He's a guy who's going to give you 400 yards, maybe 400 yards in the clutch. Maybe a couple of those are going to be big catches that turn games around, but he's not a guy you lean on to be a big receiver. I like the Bears getting other guys so you can push Taylor Gabriel a little bit further down on the usage rates and a little bit deeper into the depth chart.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, if he was on a lower tier team, I guarantee you he'd be the number 2.
All right, well, we'll move on to the schedule here, Don. We're going to start off with Chicago in Week 1, the first game of the NFL season. I know I'm thirsty for it. I know everyone else in the comments probably is too. They get the Green Bay Packers. Another matchup, just like last year, off of the get-go. We see it as a win. We talked about the Packers already. I like the Bears' chemistry. I like the fact that they're bringing all these guys back. The offensive line isn't changing. The defense isn't changing. I know you've had a little bit of turnover with the Bears in the secondary, but for the most part, all those guys are intact. I like the Bears here. Green Bay has an entirely new defense that's going to be trying to contend with a team that's able to pound the rock and able to throw on top of it. This is going to be a challenge for Green Bay.
It's also going to be a challenge for the Bears defense trying to learn Chuck Pagano. I know Chuck Pagano said that he was going to be implementing a lot of Vic Fangio style schemes, but I'm really excited and really looking forward to seeing how they're going to react under Pagano. And to me, Week 1 can go either way. I do also have the Bears taking this one, but Week 1 and 2, they're kind of hard to judge sometimes because everyone's still trying to figure things out.
Now, Weeks 2 and 3, they have a road trip. They have to go play the Broncos in Mile High in Week 2, and then after that, they got to go all the way back cross-country to Washington and face the Redskins here, but we still see them both as wins here as a show. Don, I like the matchup against the Broncos, a team that wants to play defense and run the ball like the Bears do. They're not as far along as the Bears are, especially early in the season before injuries have had a chance to take a big toll on either one of these teams. I like the Bears to overpower a team like the Broncos that aren't going to be as good at doing what the Bears want to do.
Yeah, even though Vic Fangio knows what he's getting with the Bears defense for the most part, I don't think the offense of Denver is there. It's going to be great to see 2 of the best linebackers in the game going up against each other. That's going to be one to see. I'm taking Khalil Mack in that matchup to have more sacks.
Well, let me say this. You could know Khalil Mack's coming, but the question is who's stopping him on this Broncos offensive line. There's not a guy out there I think that's going to be able to slow this man down. I think it's going to be bad. Now, yes, they have Von Miller, they have Bradley Chubb, but I have much more faith in the Bears' offensive line than I do for the Broncos. They're going to shut down a one-dimensional Broncos team that can't run the ball, and I think they're going to do the same thing in Week 2. This is a team that plays great in Week 3, I should say. This is a great team that plays amazing defense in the Redskins. They're able to run the ball incredibly effectively, but is Case Keenum going to be able to throw to Josh Doxson to beat this Bears defense? To me, this is going to be another lopsided affair where even if they're able to generate a little bit on the ground, it's not going to be enough to keep up with the Bears. I'm with Austin. I'm with Brian here. This is going to be 2 wins in a row to put the Bears at 3-0 early.
Yep, I agree.
Now, Ian says the Bears are going to take Green Bay by 10 in the first week, and Frank says the defense will be even better. Khalil Mack and Smith won't hold out this year. I'm with you. Again, that's my biggest point for Chicago's defense. Beyond the talent, we all know they're good. They know each other now. They've played together for a full year. On top of it, they're going to get a full offseason, and most of these guys are going to be returning for the entire 2019 season. You're missing a safety and a third corner, and you've done a good job of replacing them. This is going to be, at least at the it's going to be a quick start for the Bears because everybody knows each other. They know how to make things happen. Ian says,
having that off season together is really going to help this team chemistry for sure. And Khalil Mack's going to have a full off-season workout with the Bears and getting to know everything. It's going to be great, man. I can't wait to see it.
Now, Ian sees this as a win and a loss. He says they're going to be too tired in the next week versus Washington, but I just don't know that the Broncos are going to have what it takes to wear these guys out. Every game in the NFL is grueling. I think the Redskins are going to come into this game a little too one-dimensional to beat a Bears defense that if they want to stack the box, they'll just stack the box on you. Let's talk about the next games. We have the Vikings at home and then back on the road before they go on bye against the Raiders. I see the week 4 going to Ian's point that those are 2 grueling defenses. I see the Vikings as the first team to best the Bears this year, beating them in week 4 by an edge. I think Kirk Cousins will have a little bit better protection. I think that passing game is going to challenge some of these deeper receivers. You're going to struggle with Kyle Rudolph. You're going to struggle with the running game coming out of the backfield, catching the ball. I always forget this guy's name. The running back for the Minnesota Vikings name is
Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook. Thank you so much. I don't know why I always forget that name. Dalvin Cook is going to have a little bit of success catching the ball to the backfield. I think Kirk Cousins is going to be in a better form than he was last year because the protection will be somewhat better. I think Chicago is going to have a tough matchup coming off playing 2 tough defenses in the Broncos and the Redskins, and I think the Vikings defense rebounds a little bit. This offensive line is going to be worn down by week 4 a little bit.
It's easy to forget Dalvin Cook because he sucks. No, I'm just joking.
Because he plays about 4 games a year, I know.
I'm going to have to disagree with you in the show there. I think the Bears are going to handle business against Mr. Overrated Kirk Cousins. I feel like they're going to pound him like they did Week 17 last year and take him out, man. He sucks under pressure. I hate to say it. They wasted a lot of money.
And Brian, always right there. I know it's Dalvin Cook. Thank you, man, for helping me out. He also sees it as a loss and a win, and I'm kind of with him. I think I think the Vikings, if you didn't play the Broncos, a tough defense, and then the Redskins that are absolutely one of the best defenses in the NFL, they might be 5th behind those teams I mentioned before earlier in the episode. This is going to be a grueling test for them. I think the Vikings defense will be better in 2019 than they were in 2018. They took a step back, but they kept a lot of their guys around. The Vikings are going to be a challenging opponent for the Bears, for the simple fact that this might turn into a defensive struggle, and whose offense am I willing to bet on having that little bit of an edge? As much as I like what the Bears have done, you got to give it to Thielen. You got to give it to Stephon Diggs. Kyle Rudolph is there. They have Dalvin Cook. They have the weapons. I think that might be the difference in Week 4. Week 5, this is a write-off, right? I mean, this is the perfect scenario. We just had 3 rough weeks where probably we're playing good defenses. Now, all of a sudden, I get to play the Raiders. And I get to play a defense that's still trying to find itself and has absolutely lost all its talent. Khalil Mack's going to be back trying to prove a point. If they get out of this with Derek Carr healthy, Don, I see it as a win for the Raiders. The Bears should absolutely maul the Raiders in Week 5.
Over under Khalil Mack 4 sacks this game.
I think I'm going to take the under because he has mercy on Derek Carr and decides not to hit him in the 4th quarter.
Well, I'm saying 6 sacks.
Frank wants to know, are any of those defenses better than the Bears' defenses? I'm going to say no on paper, but the Broncos are going to play smash-mouth football. The Redskins are going to play smash-mouth football. The Vikings know how to play smash-mouth football. By the 3rd week of that, the Bears' defense is going to need a break, and they get that in Week 5 against the Raiders. I see that as the bounce-back game before they go on bye here, Frank. And he's going to take the over on Khalil Mack having 4 sacks against the Raiders. Maybe he wants to prove a point. Maybe he wants to prove a point. Maybe he wants to say, hey, you guys are idiots for trading a 27-year-old best pass rusher in the NFL, and let me prove it to you. Regardless of how many first-round picks or how much draft capital you got, I think he's going to hit him, but I think there's going to come a point in time where you're up by 20, 30 points, and Khalil Mack is going to sit there and say, look, Derek and I used to be friends. I'm not going to try to ruin this man's career. That's what I bet on the under.
He's gonna make Child's Play Chucky look like Chuck E. Cheese.
I think so. Now, Brian is saying he thinks this game is in London. I'm not sure if it is, but I'm not sure if it matters. Regardless of the travel, you're talking about Oakland.
It is in London, confirmed.
Okay, talking about Oakland traveling all the way from the West Coast. What is that, like 12 time zones forward to go play in London? I know Chicago's going to have it rough too, but this is a team that just played at home the week before. They're gonna have them outmatched. Maybe things get a little funky, but usually when guys get tired and everything like that, it's guys like Khalil Mack and the guys that condition themselves better than everyone else in the game that wind up having the good games. I see them making a big impact here. I think Khalil Mack is going to run this game. He's going to embarrass Trent Brown. He's going to embarrass Colton Miller or whoever decides that they want to go match up against him on the right tackle spot. I think this game is going to be one of the spots where it's over by the second half, and then the Bears probably take it a little easy on the Raiders.
Hey, real quick, beer bet. I bet you Khalil Mack uses his butt to sack Carr. I mean, he used his back last year against Aaron Rodgers. I mean, what else can he use, right?
I mean, he basically clapped his cheeks on Aaron Rodgers' arm and dragged him to the ground. The guy can tackle someone with any part of his body. Also, let me go to the comments here. Thank you, Brian. You are right. It is in London. One more time, Will. Drew is on his anniversary, so we gave him the day off. You're just stuck with me and Don, unfortunately. And Frank says Minnesota is still going to have to score. They have the offense to score, Frank. I'm with you. I like the Bears. I like their defense. But I think Minnesota Vikings, if they can protect Kirk Cousins for maybe 2.5 seconds instead of that like 1.8 they gave him against the Bears last year, they're going to have a little bit of success. Stephon Diggs is there. Adam Thielen is there. They have two of the best wide receivers in the NFL. You got to give credit to an NFL divisional opponent that they're getting you after you played two great defenses. The offense is, to me, going to be the question in that Minnesota game. Ian says the Raiders are going to want revenge, and they're going to get it in that game. Can Antonio Brown make that kind of impact? That kind of impact? Or, Don, do you see this being as one of those games that's a throwaway like I do? Am I being too harsh on the Raiders?
I don't think you are. I think it's fair for them to say, I'm sorry, I forgot who made that comment.
It was Ian.
For them to say that. Yeah, for him to say that also because it is in a different time zone. It's played in a different country. There's going to be some jet lag there. It's a trap game, especially if the Bears are off to a hot start. Antonio Brown, it's quick. People sometimes fail to realize how quick this guy is. But they're obviously going to be schemed, locked, and loaded for him. But if him and Derek Carr can build some chemistry early on in the season, I'd watch out for that combo. I think it's a good combo, man.
All right. Moving forward, Will has the Bears in that matchup. I'm totally with him there. And Brian says Gruden will trade half his team by this game. I think he might be on the waiver wire at this point, or he might be trying to make some things happen out there in Oakland because you only have a couple weeks before the trade deadline. You never know. But how much talent do they have left to trade? Except for Derek Carr, who's getting the axe? Antonio Brown, they're going to move him by week 8?
They're going to bring back Trent Richardson.
That is my friend Don Johnson. He's on the phone with us, Jeremy. You might not be able to see my phone. It is next to the microphone. We're talking with Don today because Drew is off for his anniversary. Really quick here. Will says Gruden is a great coach, but he has so much to prove, and I think you're a couple of years away from rebuilding the roster to prove it. I don't think Gruden is a great coach. I think he's a good coach that had a lot of talent when he won in Tampa Bay, and this is coming from a Tampa Bay fan. I think he was a guy that was in the right place at the right time, that is a good coach on top of it. I don't think Gruden is a guy that's going to elevate this Raiders roster that still has so many holes in the offensive line, still is looking for that smackdown number one running back, I should say, and a defense that to me has question marks all over the field. So I think they are going to have a lot of questions to answer before 2019 is over. 2020, maybe we'll talk about the Raiders. 2019, I think it's going to be a challenge. Will says Derek Carr is underrated. I'm with you there, but he can only do so much. Maybe Derek Carr is the shining star in this offense this year with Antonio Brown and like the receiver they got from the Chargers, who's Tyrell Williams. Thank you, Jake, for helping yourself out. I think the Raiders will have a halfway decent offense, but I think their defense is going to be atrocious. They're not going to be good enough to do it. Let's move forward, though, Don. Austin's glad you're here as well. He agrees with you, but I got to say this, Don. Before we move into week 7 and 8, this is a tough stretch, man. Let's talk 7, 8, 9. because they get the Saints at home, they get the Chargers at home, and then they get the Eagles on the road. This is where the absolute rubber hits the road, in my opinion, and the Bears get to prove whether they're a good team or whether they're one of those teams that might not be as good as everyone else in the NFC. You get the Saints. I see this as a win. I think coming off a bye week, an extra week to prepare is going to be a great setup for the Chicago Bears to beat a team like the Saints, who are going to be coming in. They're going to be a little more tired than you. They're going to have a few less options than you do, especially in the passing game. It's going to be Michael Thomas or bust. I think the Bears are going to do enough and get after Drew Brees to win this game. I think this is going to be the game of the week, and it's going to be one of those games that Drew Brees is going to struggle in.
Look, this stretch of games is gonna separate the men from the boys. It's gonna show you the progress you've made. It's gonna show you whether you've taken a step forward or you're taking a step back. You need to make a statement during the season, and you need to make a statement during this run. If you can take two games out of the three here, I'd be happy. Especially if they're lucky, the Saints are coming to Chicago. The Saints don't play well in Chicago. I feel like they can win that game. As for the others, I could see them winning. Philip Rivers, another year older, another year passes by. I don't think. I say that every year, but he still seems to find enough left in the tank to be able to win. I'm looking forward to that Eagles game, though. I want to see how they react. I want to see if they go out and get payback. I want to see how Jordan Howard's going to play. It's going to be a big game. I feel like if they could take 2 out of 3, they'll be in great shape.
Now, Ian here says they're going to take 3 losses in a row. The Saints are hungry. Bad L streak for them, period. But Brian's kind of reading my mind, saying win, loss, win. I think the Chargers are probably the most susceptible to lose in this kind of situation to the Bears, but I think that for that reason, they're more likely to win. I think the Bears are going to be hyped up for the Saints game, even though the Chargers are good. I think it's going to be too much for them to match up against the Chargers, who are going to get after Mitch Trubisky. As good as this offensive line is, they're not going to keep guys like Joey Bosa out of the backfield. I think this is where Trubisky struggles a little bit. We're going to see the Chargers win in Week 8, and then Week 9, there's no way they lose to this Eagles team, right? I mean, with all that happened last year, with all the smack talk, with Cody Parkey departing now, they have to beat the Eagles, right? They are going to go into this game so motivated. I think for that fact alone, they're going to wind up beating the Eagles in what might be the toughest stretch of their schedule for the past 3 for a 3-game stretch.
Look, if I'm a Bears fan, or if I'm the Bears, I'm taking that Chargers loss in those 2 wins any day. It's out of conference. It's you're playing 2 teams in your conference that could potentially come down to the wild. I'm saying wild card is in worst case scenario, even though I have them winning the division. You need to win those 2 NFC games. That AFC game, if I'm a Bears fan, I'm not worried about it.
Going to the comments here, Brian says, Gruden inherited Dungy's team in Tampa Bay. I'm with you there. He didn't build the team, but he knew what to do with them. That's why they won the Super Bowl. Xander wants to talk about Tom Brady. I'm not sure what we can mention, Xander, but I will say this. He's a great guy. He's a great quarterback. I think everyone at this point kind of acknowledges that. Brian says win, loss, win, just like I said. Will is also in on the Bears. And also, Will says Rivers is the man. I know, he's Cal Ripken for the NFL. He's the guy who never misses any game. He's played on torn ACLs and everything else. I think Rivers is going to have just enough to beat out a rookie like Trubisky. This might be the upset game where the Bears maybe don't quite show up as tough as they need to. Even though I think the Chargers team is fool's gold, I think they're going to sneak a win against the Bears in Week 8. Moving forward through the comments here, Brian says Wentz will probably be hurt by this point. I think Wentz is healthy. I really do. I think he's going to bounce back a little bit. He's got a lot to prove. I think the Eagles have made a point to protect him. I think he's going to do a good job. I think they're going to do a good job of keeping Wentz somewhat upright in this game, but I still am willing to bet on the Bears because I think they're going to be able to pass well enough with guys like Miller and guys like Taylor Gabriel to beat up on the second half or the back half of this Philadelphia Eagles secondary. Except for Ronald Darby, the Eagles don't have a secondary. So, or at least cornerbacks. I think they're going to have a lot of success with the depth on the roster, which the Bears have tried to improve this offseason. Brian also says the Chargers D-line will give the Bears O-line fits. I'm right there with you. I think that's the difference in this one. And Will also wants to mention Cody Double Clang Parkey. Yeah, he's not here. Fortunately, the Bears are going to be playing without him. Let's move on, Don. Let's talk about weeks 10, 11, 12, and 13 here. They get the Lions twice in that stretch. They go on the road to face the Rams, and then the Giants at home. A little bit easier. You get that one game to look forward to. You still have the Lions twice that are an in-division opponent, and some people believe are going to be better than others do. I think this is going to be 2 wins against the Lions because I don't think the Lions, for as much as they've done to improve this team, are going to have the firepower to keep up with the Bears.
Yes, I have the 2 Lions win. I don't think that they're going to beat the Rams in LA. I think Aaron Donald this year, I've been watching some of his interviews and some of the things that he's been doing, man. I think he's going to be coming back this year better than last, and that's saying a lot, man. This guy's an absolute monster. It's going to be a little bit of a different scenario this year. I think the Rams are going to be taking that game.
I actually disagree with you. I think the Bears beat the Rams even on the road. I think the Rams are going to be one of those teams that if you can disrupt their offense a little bit, and I think the Bears are maybe the team to do it in the NFC, then it's going to come down to can Aaron Donald win on this defense pretty much alone. I don't like the LaMarcus Joyner subtraction. I don't like losing one of the best safeties in the NFL and letting him move on because you didn't want to pay him. I like Eric Weddle, but at this point he's like 34 or 35 years old. So how much impact is he going to make against a Bears offense that I believe is going to be much improved? I think Mitch Trubisky is going to have an easy time against guys like Aqib Talib and Michael and Peters, because I don't believe either one of those guys at this point in their career are going to be elite. I like Talib. I think he's one of the best corners to play in the NFL ever, but I think at 33 years old, he's going to struggle against Allen Robinson, and Marcus Peters is a touchdown waiting to happen. He's going to get some interceptions, but he's not going to be able to shut down wide receivers, and I think the Bears will be fine as long as they put 3 receivers on the board and on the field in the majority of these situations. I think it's a close one. I think the Rams lose this one, and I think the Giants lose too. I don't have a lot to say about that game. I think that's going to be the Bears doing whatever they want offensively. They're going to manhandle the Giants. The Giants will put up a few points, but against this defense, whether it's Eli, whether it's a rookie in Daniel Jones, it's a death sentence for whatever quarterback goes up against this Bears offense, and that offensive line is not going to be good enough to keep them out of the backfield.
Also, one last point, the Giants don't have Odell Beckham to throw a touchdown against the Bears this year, so they're definitely not winning that game. Precisely.
And Frank, you're right there with me, man. I killed my last Yingling. That's why I'm trying to hustle through this show so I can go out and buy some more. Ian sees this as a win-loss-win. Brian's saying win-win, loss-win. He sees the Giants as a loss. That's a bit of a shock for me, but you never know. Maybe it's that come-down game after you play the Rams and beat them. But Brian, on the other hand, he says the Rams are going to avenge the loss in Chicago last year. Frank says Gurley is done. I think he'll be okay, Frank. I really do. I think they've kind of learned their lesson. I know he's got an arthritic knee, but ask any NFL player, they have arthritis in like every joint they have because the game is so rough. I think he'll be okay. I think the Rams are going to limit him a little bit, but I don't think a limited Todd Gurley is enough to beat a team like Chicago that is going to be that good at getting after the quarterback. We'll move forward here, Don. We'll talk about this last stretch of games. They have the Cowboys at home, and then they go on the road to face the Packers again. They get the Chiefs and then the Vikings to round things out on the road in Week 17. Another tough stretch with Cowboys, Packers, Chiefs, but I will say this. Week 15, Aaron Rodgers may not be the same guy as Week 1 Aaron Rodgers. Do you see him being healthy?
I do and I don't. If they can keep him upright, yes. If they don't, obviously not. I do think the Bears are going to sweep the Packers this year, even though it's easier said than done. But I'm looking forward to this Chiefs game. I'm really looking forward to see how Patrick Mahomes is going to be playing that late. The game's going to be in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. So there might be some snow on the ground. But I honestly think that at this point, the Chiefs are going to have more to play for than the Bears. They're going to have a lot more pressure on them. I feel like the Chiefs are going to be playing for a wild card spot because I don't see them winning the division this year, especially if Tyreek Hill isn't there.
Wow.
That's the only reason
I
don't have them winning the division. If Tyreek Hill does not play, which I don't think he will, but that's a different story. That's a different topic. So I do think the Chiefs will have more to play for. But I also don't see the Bears defense letting up on anybody, no matter who it is.
I'm with you. The key to the game here is can Khalil Mack and that defense he leads up front make enough pressure and throw Patrick Mahomes out of his groove? I think that there's a team to do it. It might be the Bears in the NFL this year, especially with the Ravens having these losses. This might be the best offense versus defense matchup in the NFL. I can't wait to watch it. I have another surprise loss on the board. I have the Chiefs winning this one. Like you said, I think they have more to play for here. But I actually have the Cowboys beating the Chicago Bears as well in Week 14. I know it's a bit of a surprise. I know everyone's going to say the Cowboys really, but I think the Cowboys have a pretty good two-pronged attack with Amari Cooper playing and with the way this offensive line has the potential to run block. I think Zeke Elliott's going to take a lot of the attention, and Amari Cooper is going to punish the secondary that even though they're very good, I don't see guys like Kyle Fuller showing up and taking Amari Cooper out of the game. I think the Cowboys, with the defense on top of it, may frustrate Trubisky, and I think this is going to be a close win for them, but I think this is one of those games that the Cowboys are they're approaching being a complete team. They're another receiver and tight end away from being a complete team. I think this Cowboys team is going to make people struggle against them. I think the Bears, coming off a game like the Lions, are going to struggle with them.
Yes, the Cowboys have. They got Grandpa back. They got Jason Witten back. They got Sure Hands McGee back. They got Mr. I run 2 miles an hour, but somehow find a way to get open back. I mean, this guy's clutch. I see him making some plays. Zeke Elliott, as long as he can stay on the field and get away from his off-the-field issues, he's a beast, man. He's hard to contain. And the only way I see the Cowboys winning this game is if they can get the run game going. And, Zeke's a big boy, man. He's hard to bring down. So if he can get the ball pound the ball down the middle of the Bears' throat, then yes, I can see them winning this game, definitely.
Now, I do see this as a win against Week 15 in the Packers, even on the road. I think the Pack isn't going to have enough at the end of the season to beat the Bears. I also see them beating the Vikings on the road to round out strong in the division. As a show, we have them ranking 12-4. High praise from us. We've only given one other 12-win season, I believe. I think this is going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year, and I think it's because they've basically stuck together. We don't see that all the time. I know defense kind of comes and goes a little bit in the NFL. I talk about that a lot, but when you have Khalil Mack leading the charge and all the rest of the talent on that defense, they're going to be good enough to make an impact. I really do. I think they're going to be just as good as they were in 2018. Maybe the smallest of strides backward, but it's not going to be enough to make a difference. I think they're going to get better on offense, and I think the Bears are going to be hungry after that Cody Parkey rob that they had. That double clang, I think this team is going to come out motivated. Let me do a couple Go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, I do too. I think this is all on Trubisky. This is all on Trubisky. I can't say that enough. You know what you're getting with the defense. You know you're going to get takeaways. You know you're going to get points. Can Trubisky be consistent? Can he give you a 28 touchdown and 12 interception year? That's the question mark, man. That's all. It's all on his shoulders. I can't stress that enough.
I'm with you. Going back to the comments, Brian was saying the Bears did shut down Todd Gurley last year in Chicago. You're right, but I feel like the Bears were playing that like it was the Super Bowl, and to the Rams, it was just another game. I think that's a big part. I don't think the Bears are just another game to the Rams anymore. I think the respect level has risen a little bit since last season. Going back to it, Brian saying the Bears will sweep the Lions. I'm with you on that one. I think they will. And Frank saying it was just his opinion going back before, but he doesn't think who are we talking about? Todd Gurley would be as productive. I'm with you. I don't think he's going to put the same numbers up. But I think that's going to be by design a little bit, Frank. I think they're going to learn their lesson and say, we can't, even though he's 25 or 26 years old, or 24 for Todd Gurley, you can't run him into the ground because we want this guy to make it to 30, 31, 32. The best way to do that for a running back is to find a guy to share with. And I think that's what they're going to try to do out there in L.A. Moving forward here. Brian is saying Kelsey will be the X factor in the Chiefs game. I don't know. The Bears are a very athletic defense. I think they're going to have some kind of game plan to come up with it. It might be Eddie Jackson. It might be their rookie linebacker. It's not Rolando McClain. It is Roquan Smith. Thank you. I think Roquan Smith is going to match up pretty well. I think Eddie Jackson may see some time over the top on Kelsey as well. If you're going to beat him, it's got to be Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill's got to have a fantastic game for the Chiefs, and he's got to do it quick. They're going to have to creatively get the ball in his hands. We'll see. And also Will saying Uncle Drew is steaming with that comment, but that's okay. Drew can steam. That's what he gets for missing the show.
What's that big cloud of smoke above the bar there?
He must have just got back. All right, we'll talk about Austin's comment. He says, love Witten coming back for the Cowboys. Do I think Witten's the X factor? Probably not, but hopefully he's a mentor. Brian is saying 12-4 or 11-5. I'm all in on the Bears. I think the Bears, if they can stay healthy, are going to be that team that makes that deep push in the playoffs this year. I'm not going to say they win. I like the Saints. I still like the Rams, even though I like them less. I still like the Eagles. I still like the Cowboys. I still even like the Seahawks, Robert, if you're watching. The Bears are going to be in the mix, though, and I like what they're doing. I really do. The question is, can you keep everybody healthy? Can you keep Mitch Trubisky on the field, and does he take that step forward? So we have him 12-4. I think you guys are pretty close to where we're at. This is going to be one of the more interesting teams in the NFC. And also, Frank wants to know, is Hill even going to be there? I hope by week 16, Tyreek Hill's return. They're not going to suspend him for a season. I see maybe an 8 or a 10-game suspension at worst. I think the NFL is going to be a little more lenient. They met with him for 8 hours. We haven't heard anything about a suspension. I think Tyreek Hill's going to be fine. All right. Edward also says the Bears are a chip made. I don't know. I'm not going to say made. The NFC is so tough. Look at last year. You were a field goal away from beating the Eagles. The Eagles were one catch by Alshon Jeffrey away from beating the Saints. The Saints were one call away from beating the Rams. And the Rams were 10 points away from beating the Patriots. These are all teams that could absolutely be in the mix. I don't want to say anyone in the NFC is championship made because the competition is so tough. Now, the Titans, they've got AFC written, like, that's on lock. We're not worried about that. But the NFC is anybody's game.
The Titans need to be in the AFC East, man. If they were in the AFC East, you guys would be golden on the wild card.
Exactly. Now, Ian is saying 9-6. I think he meant 9-7. Brian's right there saying same on the Bears. Austin says he is definitely not the X factor, but he's a solid tight end, and he will be an even better veteran mentor. I'm with you, Austin. I hope he can give a little bit to this team because I'm just happy he's out of the Monday Night Football booth. I think he was one of the worst Monday Night Football commentators ever, especially when they were playing against my Titans, and literally his entire commentary is that's BS. How can the Cowboys be losing to this team nobody cares about? It's like, okay, way to stay in the middle there, Witten. Before we round it out, Don, any final thoughts about this Bears team?
Look, I can't say enough with the type of atmosphere I've seen Matt Nagy bring, the type of unity that he's promoted within this team. It's something that the city of Chicago has been missing with these Bears. You can't be a market like Chicago and be terrible at football for years and years. And
yeah, boo, all we have to root for is the Blackhawks. Get out of here. You don't get any more final thoughts. What is that?
Blackhawks, we got the
Blackhawks, Cubs. Get out of here.
But going back to my comments, though, it's really good to see a team come back like this, especially in a big market. This guy obviously knows what he's doing. He's a player's type of coach, but he also looks like he's the type of coach that can get kind of grimy and dirty when he needs to with these guys to kind of keep them on track. So. Good luck to the Bears. I hope they clutch it this year. They certainly have the tools to be able to do that, and Bears fans have a lot to look forward to this year. I know that Chicago media can be pretty rough, so as long as Trubisky stays with a cool head, and it looks like he's going to, and it looks like what the media says doesn't really matter or bother him as a quarterback, that's the way you got to be, man.
All right, Don, I want to thank you for being our special guest here, guys. I want to thank each and every one of you for your comments, your shares, your likes. Everything you do helps the show out tremendously, guys. I can't thank you enough. I was not able to write your names down. Again, I'm trying to run about 40 different things all at once. But each and every one of you, I want to give my special thanks to. If you commented, even if you didn't, even if you were just watching the show is better because you are here. Thank you so much. And a special thank you to Don for showing up and filling in the gaps while Drew was, slacking and going on an anniversary or whatever.
It's my pleasure. You guys have the best fans out in the sports media today. You guys do an awesome job. I can't say that enough. Make sure you hit me up when you guys talk about the 49ers because I'd love to give you guys some input there. But, yeah, man, you guys keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Can't say it enough.
Hats off to you guys again. So for Sports Around the Bar, I am Jake. We were joined by special guest Don Johnson out there in 49. Well, I guess you're in Chicago now. Used to be in 49er land. For Sports Around the Bar, we will be back on Monday to talk about everything else going on in the NFL. I think it's Bengals. Don't quote me on that. We've got another NFL team coming up. Edward says Tennessee 7-9. All I can say is 9-7, dude, just like we've been doing for the past 3 years. So for Sports Around the Bar, I am Jake, your bartender. Hopefully Monday we'll see Drew back over here, and we will see you guys on Monday. Thank you again. It's been fun, guys.